with who we've got? And so welcome everybody. Sorry, hearing just all lost chat and everything. Just a bit of housekeeping. So we are going to record the presentation part for people that can't make it this evening. So please, if you just turn off your cameras and your microphone for a bit while Catherine's speaking. And I think because there is meant to be quite a lot of us on this call, if you've got any questions, either start putting them in the chat or raise your hand at the end, and we can kind of see what the themes of the questions are, and we'll get through as many as we can. Is that all right, Catherine? See how the questions go at the end. And I think if we can, Priyanka, we haven't really talked about this, but maybe we'd be able to do a poll at the end about it, but maybe I can text you about that, but it'd be good to find out your feedback. So yeah, so I'll hand over to Catherine. So welcome, Catherine, and thank you for doing this this evening. I think there's been a lot of interest, so it'll be good to see about it. So welcome.
Okay, thank you for hosting it. So it's really good to have the opportunity to talk to everybody about this. So if you came to the patient day, you might have heard a bit about this. Tom Frazier from the States did a little talk there, and we have got up and running. So let me introduce myself first for anyone who doesn't know me. I am a clinical geneticist based down in Southampton, and I'm the medical trustee for PTEN UKI. I've had a what doctors call a special interest in PTEN and people affected by alterations in the PTEN gene since I was a registrar, and I went travelling around the country about 20 years ago now, visiting people who had been found to have an alteration in the gene, and I wrote a paper about it, and I've kept an interest ever since, and I see a lot of the families down in this part of the country. So let me tell you a bit more about the PTEN NET study. So NET stands for Neuro Evaluation Tool. I'm going to, hopefully it's going to move on to my next slide for me. Here we go. So I haven't put in a lot of slides about what PTEN and PTEN hamartoma tumour syndrome are, but I always think it's good just to start with this, because I know that sometimes there are people on the calls who've only found out about it quite recently, and I didn't want to make an assumption that everybody on the call would know quite a lot about it. So it's a condition that can affect children and adults, and it's a genetic condition, and so it's something that is with people throughout their whole lives. Having an alteration in the gene predisposes to a broad range of issues. So those can be neurodevelopmental issues in childhood, so developmental delay, sometimes autism, and to certain cancers in adulthood. But we know that sometimes those can happen a little bit earlier, but the chances of that happening increase as people get older and older. The majority of people with this grow up and function as independent adults, and we know that about 15% of people with it have significant learning disabilities, quite often associated with autism or autism spectrum disorder. Of that 15%, there's a smaller proportion with a really severe learning disability or autism, such that they're minimally verbal or even non-verbal. We usually diagnose children because of their big heads and developmental delay, and sometimes we find out that one of their parents has it too as we start to talk about the family history and so on. Sometimes when we go and talk to parents and they found out that they have it too, they say, well, actually, although I'm fine, I have a job, I have a family and everything else, I did have some developmental issues as a child. And sometimes they go back and ask their parents and they didn't know much about it until they had a chat. Or they'd had investigations as a child for having a really big head, because having a big head often goes along with this. So one thing people often ask about is why all these different names, and what if I've been told I've got Cowden syndrome or Banyan-Riley-Russell-Carber, which we usually call BRRS, or what if I've been told all my child has is autism and macrocephaly, which means a big head, with a PTEN gene alteration. Can I still take part in this? And absolutely you can. What we do is think of them all under one big umbrella. So they're all different conditions that were described at different times by different doctors, but they're all caused by alterations in the same gene. And it's very difficult for doctors to predict who with one particular gene alteration will have which problems. And so we put everybody under one umbrella rather than separating everybody out. They can be helpful for you and for doctors to know what sort of ballpark people fit into. So I might talk to my colleagues and say, oh yes, well, you know, this child, we saw them and they had, they look like somebody with BRRS, and then I don't have to explain everything about them because another doctor will understand what that means. Okay, so I feel like I skipped a slide there. No, I haven't. Okay, so who are we? I've missed a slide out. There was definitely one with Tom Frazier's picture on, but maybe it's coming up next. I think it is. They might have swapped over. Okay, so who is running it? Who can take part? What is it, and why might you want to take part in it? And why might we as medical professionals want to run this study and think it's important? So the aim of this is to develop and test online questionnaires and measures of thinking. So that's what we mean by a neuro evaluation tool. It's measures of thinking skills relevant to people with PHTS. So who am I doing this with? So I'm definitely not doing this on my own. So the key person is Tom Frazier, who is a clinical psychologist at John Carroll University in America. He has worked with Carrie Seng at the Cleveland Clinic, and his research is on autism and on other related conditions. And he's particularly interested in webcam technology and trying to reduce the burden for parents and caregivers of getting a diagnosis and helping us understand more about autism. This study is, this study is not all about autism though. That's his background. So he's a clinical psychologist with lots of expertise in understanding thinking skills and so on as well. Okay, let's see if it's going to move on for me. There we go. What is it? So I've already said it's a measure to track thinking skills and behaviour. What does it consist of? So it's online surveys and webcam measures. The survey is completed by a parent or a caregiver, or we are including adult participants as well. And I'll talk a bit more detail about that as I go through my slides. So we are including adult patients with no intellectual difficulties who could easily complete a survey for themselves. But for everybody, the survey is done by an informant. And so that's a sort of technical language we use. And that person might be a partner, a spouse, a close friend, or of course a parent. And that could be the case for a child or an adult. It just needs to be somebody close to them who knows them well. The webcam measure is completed by the person with PTEN. It takes about 15 minutes altogether, but you can do it in little chunks. You don't have to sit still for 15 minutes to do it. And it involves watching a screen, very much like what we're doing at the moment, and following some simple instructions. And from the States, from their experience, even for very young children or people with significant communication issues, they've got really useful information from people doing the webcam measures because it monitors their engagement through monitoring their eye movements. And so I'll show you a bit more about that as we go through. Okay. So what we're doing with in the UK is doing the recruitment for UK participants. And the US team will have access to the data, and they'll analyse the data from the survey and from the performance measures. And I'll talk about how that's going to work with the data and so on a little bit later on as well. Okay, so this is just to show you what sort of things you might see if you do the webcam measure as someone with PTEN. So you'll look at screens and it might say, look at the horse, look at the cow, and it's monitoring your eye movements while you're doing that. There's a section that's looking at words. There's another section where you're not asked to do anything in particular. You can see these people throwing a beach ball around, and that bit's just seeing where does somebody look. Do they look at the people? Do they look at the ball? Do they look at the walls? What are their eye movements doing when there's no instruction about what to do? Okay, so why do we want to develop it? There's measures that we use to diagnose autism and to diagnose intellectual disability and to work out what particular areas somebody might have difficulties with. A developmental paediatrician might do something like that in a very young child. In someone older and at school, it might be an educational psychologist. And in somebody older, it might be a clinical psychologist, or it can be something that happens through things like CAMS services as well. But those measures aren't developed specifically for people with PTEN, and they didn't include PTEN patients when they developed those measures. And if you've done them, you'll know that you have to go in person to do a lot of those. They take quite a long time. And if you wanted to use them to monitor somebody's progress, that's quite a big burden of going through very long questionnaires, some of which can take most of a day to do for somebody. So what they wanted to do was develop a tool that you could do from home, from somewhere comfortable, that's not stressful. You don't have to go to clinic, which some people find very stressful for lots of different reasons, and that it would assess all these different day-to-day skills and behavioural symptoms, cognitive abilities, so our thinking, and our daily living skills, so things like getting dressed and being independent. We also know that when we've got people with a rare genetic condition, it can be difficult to collect information about all those different people in a very consistent way. And particularly when they all live in different parts of a country, or they live all over different parts of the world. And so to have something like this where we can collect information and it can be standardized, and for a starting point standardized across people who have English as their first language, then that would be really good for future research and being able to monitor people and see how they progress over time. And having a survey that's short, you can access from home, it's quite quick and easy to do, would be really, really helpful. The long-term aim of it is that you wouldn't just use it as a one-off, but you would use it to monitor people's progress. And you might know that there's already been a treatment trial in the States that used a medicine that acts in the PTEN pathway to see if that was given to people with PTEN, if that changed their thinking and helped with children's development. But what became apparent when they were doing that study was that they didn't have standardized, quick, easy tests they could use. Everyone had to go to a hospital to have that done, and with traveling long distances across the States. So they wanted something quicker, easier, and that people could do without having to travel. We don't think it's ever going to replace those tests that people have to diagnose things like autism, but it could be useful for monitoring people, and particularly within the context of a clinical trial of a medicine or some other sort of therapy as well. Okay. Make it move on again. Okay, so who can take part? So very quick overview. There is more detail to this, but just as the headlines, you need to have a diagnosis of PTES. So you have a PTEN gene variant. It should be classified by the laboratory as causing someone's symptoms, but if it's been reported back to you as probably causing your symptoms, then that is very likely to be good enough to take part in the study. So if you have got a variant that you've been told is a variant of uncertain significance, we'd still very much like to hear from you about this. You need somebody to take part with the person who has PTEN. That might be a parent, another family member, or an informant. So for an adult, that could be a husband or wife. It could be somebody who's a very close friend, or it might be a parent, particularly if someone's young and still living at home. The age range is from age 3. And that's because we wouldn't expect any child younger than age 3 to be able to do the performance measure. And it goes up to 45. I'll talk a bit more about that when I get to the adult slide. And then it's also some more detail around access to internet connection and the IT needed to do it. So let's concentrate a bit on children taking part. So again, diagnosis of having a PTEN gene alteration, having a parent or guardian who can participate with them and fill in the surveys, must be at least 3 years old. And then the other thing that's really important is that we're looking for children who aren't known to have PTES, so siblings of children with this, who we'd really like to be in a control group. So we like control groups in studies because they tell us quite a lot about comparability. How does it work in other people? And a control group of people who are growing up in the same household, so their environment is very similar, is also useful. So if you've got other children who are not known or suspected to have PTES, we can talk to you about them taking part as part of the control group as well. Okay, so adult participants, I've divided this into 2. So people who don't have autism or a significant learning disability, have a diagnosis of a PTEN gene alteration, and have somebody who they are happy to act as an informant for them. So I have to say, as an adult, I might find it slightly strange if someone asked my husband to fill in a survey about how I act in day-to-day life. But I suppose he might be a bit more objective about it than me, and might observe things about me that perhaps I don't have insight into or notice about myself. The other reason for doing it like that is that Tom and the team in the States wanted to keep the measure the same across all age groups, so that if we were monitoring people from different age groups who were being given a treatment, you've got that consistency of how you are monitoring them. And of course, this is a study. We want to see if this does work. So it's really important that we do have people who are willing to try this and see how it goes. The other thing that's sometimes noticed, and there are some emerging studies about this, is that there are adults with PTES who have never got a diagnosis of a neurocognitive problem, and educationally have done really well through school, but they might have more subtle issues that are consistent with other people with a PTEN gene diagnosis. in the way that they think and in the way that their memory operates. So there is a little bit of evidence that adults with PTEN may have issues with working memory, with impulse control, and sometimes with motor skills, so the way they coordinate their body and so on. And so the questions are, I really don't want you to think it's all about autism. It's about all those different aspects of how we think and how we operate in day-to-day life. And there is a bit about quality of life as well, which I think is really important for people with this condition. So we are also including adults with autism or with a significant learning disability who have a diagnosis of PHTS, and who again have somebody who is willing to fill in the surveys for them. But that person for this group also has to be able not to consent on that person's behalf, but to be able to say this person is willing to do this and able to cooperate and willing to do that. And because of the way the ethics approval was granted for this group of patients, for the majority of people, the consent isn't simply filling in a form. There's a virtual appointment with me to go through the consent for this group of people. And that's because the ethics committee wanted to be very clear that we weren't coercing anybody into taking part and that no harm could come to anybody. It's hard to think how it could do from watching something on a webcam, but the ethics process is very careful and considered in this country, and that is really important because as doctors, the last thing we want to do is to do any harm to anybody taking part in a study or when we are looking after them clinically at work. Okay, so what are the other requirements? So you need to have access to a tablet, a computer, a PC, a Mac, a desktop, and it must have at least a 10-inch screen. A bigger screen than that is actually better. That means you can't do it on your phone. And that's because to track somebody's eye movements on a phone, you wouldn't see the eye movements clearly enough because they're only moving in a very small area. So that's why you need the bigger screen. You need access to reliable internet. You need to be able to hear the instructions. So your computer or the sound system needs to have some speakers to go along with it or a pair of headphones. And you need to be able to sit and watch a screen for about 40 seconds. When I've spoken to the team in the States about this, and it is something they've said, lots of people have said about people with PHTS with significant communication issues or with autism, that they might not be able to do that. They really want anyone who can sit and look at a screen and an iPad to have a go at it, because unless we get people to have a try, we don't know what group of people this might work for. And what they're saying is that from the early results so far that haven't been analysed fully, but they do get good information, even just from doing the calibration parts of the test. And so I think we're really keen for as many people to have a go. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. We don't want anyone to get upset. You can always go back and have a try again later when someone's more in the mood or less tired or not feeling a bit unwell or whatever. But we're really keen for as many people to have a go. You obviously need a quiet space, and we all know that when we're at home and there's other kids and dogs and everything else going on, that can be a bit tricky. So when you sit down to do it, it's really important to try and find a time where the house is quiet with minimal distractions and your phone's turned to silent and all that sort of thing. You need to be fluent in English because all the questionnaires are in English. There have been discussions about translating into other languages, but that's more of a further step in the study, not this early initial stages. And we are doing and what we have ethical approval for is to recruit people who are resident in the UK. So I know that sometimes we get people on these power hours and so on, and part of our group who live elsewhere. I'm really sorry, but we can't recruit you into the study if you live outside the UK. Okay. And if you've got questions about this and you think, I'd like to have a go, but I'm not sure how it's going to work, just get in touch and we'll talk to you about it, help with any practical issues. And part of our ethical approval was that we would try and help people to participate whenever we could. So if you don't have access to the right size screen or speakers or a webcam, it might be possible to post those things out for you to borrow for the time you're participating, or for us to help you find a quiet space, maybe in a classroom, a child's school or an office. What we can't do is do it in a hospital, because that's part of the way the study's set up, is that people don't have to go to hospital and have that sort of stress of going to a clinical environment to take part. So it should be done somewhere that's familiar to the people taking part and where they feel comfortable. So how do you take part? I learned to do QR codes as part of this, so you can scan this QR code, and if you do that, it'll take you to an email to our Net Study email address, or you can telephone, and that will take you through to our research nurses, yeah, or you can just scan the QR code, and that's on the little flyer as well. Okay, now when you contact us, tell us as much as you can. It's really helpful if you tell us how you want us to contact you back. So would you rather us just email you? Do you want a telephone call? It sounds really obvious, but sometimes people forget to put the telephone number in. Who to ask to speak to, and what are the best days or times. We can be flexible, we can do things sort of early evenings and so on. It's helpful to know who in your family has the PTEN gene alteration, and so who you think might be eligible to take part. Tell us how old they are. I've just seen a question in the chat about 61 and 62-year-olds. So at the moment, the age range is just going up to 45. It may be that they extend it, but at the moment, somebody that age doesn't fit into the criteria for taking part, which I think is a bit of a shame, but that's how the study's set up for the time being. But don't worry, we will bear you in mind for the future. And if you know it, but don't worry if you don't, because we can go and find out, that's part of the consent process. Tell us what the gene change actually is. And if you've got a copy of the report with it in, a little scan of that, or a photo of the letter with it in is helpful. And if you tell us your genetic centre or the geneticist or genetic counsellor that you've seen, that's also very helpful. If you don't, that'll be part of the consent process, but it can just speed things up a bit and help us know if you are eligible and sort things out a bit more quickly for you. Okay. So there is a bit of compensation for taking part in this. It doesn't happen with studies very often in the UK, but with this study, you don't get anything back. You don't get a result from the survey or from the webcam measure, because they're still being developed. They're not finished. We're trying to work out if we've got the right questions in them and if the way that you're asked to answer them works and that sort of thing. And so because you're actually helping to form the test itself, we are allowed to offer a small amount of compensation for taking part. So if you do all the stages of the study as a pair, you get £25 each time the survey is completed and each time the webcam measures completed. And we ask you to do it 3 times at the start, at 1 month and 3 months after that. So if you do all those 3 episodes of doing this altogether, the pair would get £150. And so if there's more than one person in the family, you could get significantly more than that, because if you're doing a survey for 2 children, you would get the £150 for doing that for that second child as well, and so on. Okay, and it's the same for sibling controls, it's the same for adults, it's the same for adults with a learning disability, and I argued quite hard with the ethics committee that it was appropriate for everybody to be offered this, not certain groups, because I thought that was discriminatory, and I also wanted it to be comparable with what's happening in the States as well, because they do offer that there, and it's a little bit more commonplace to do that there. Okay, so that's all the sort of basics of what happens. So let's find out a little bit more about it. So one thing people are often interested in is data protection. So what happens to the data when you take part? So your consent forms and everything like that, everything with your name on is kept confidentially in the UK. We don't share your name or your details with the team over there at all. They won't know who you are. But they can access the results. And what you might say is, but me or my child is being filmed by my webcam, so won't they see that? And actually they don't. What they see when they're looking at the readout is this sort of heat map. So if you look here, this is what they see, and this heat map moves around the screen with someone's eye movements, and that's what they see. There's no actual film of the person doing the webcam measure at all. So they will never see you. And all the data that's recorded is encrypted. There's lots more detail about that if anybody thinks that they want to know more about it, but we were very careful to make sure that we kept your personal information in the UK and only share anonymous information with the teams in the States. Okay, what about consent? How does that work? So this is always a part of taking part in research in the NHS. The research is being looked at by an independent group of people that we call a research ethics committee. So they're all volunteers. They're groups of people who might be patients with a particular condition, they might be researchers themselves, they might be doctors, they might be people with an interest in ethics or lawyers. They can be anyone of any sort of background who has joined an ethics committee and volunteered to review research and check that they think it is being done in an ethical way that won't harm people. So that was part of the process from talking to Tom about doing the study, is getting the approval to do this in the UK, and it's been approved by the Hampshire A, because there are two, there's a Hampshire B as well, Research Ethics Committee. They actually have an expertise in looking at research that is being offered to people with learning disabilities, and also to studies that cross international boundaries. So they're a really good group to ask to look at this study for us. So when you contact us, we'll find out a little bit more to check you're eligible to take part, and then we'll send you an information sheet to read. We can send you that by email, which is quick and easy. If you prefer to have it by post, we can do it like that, and you can return it by post to us. We need a consent form for each person, apart from children, where the consent form covers the parent and the child as a pair together. For adults, if you are the informant for an adult without autism or a learning disability, you have your own separate form as well. And then for people with who are over 16, so that's the cutoff for being an adult with autism or an intellectual disability, the majority of people will have a virtual appointment with me and the person who's acting as their informant, and that's a requirement of the ethics approval. Okay, and just because you get in touch to talk to us doesn't mean you have to take part. You can change your mind, and if you say you want to take part and then you change your mind and drop out, that's also completely okay. So Katerina was here at the start. Part of on the consent form is about data sharing with the UK PTEN registry. So you might remember that Mark Tishkovitz and Katerina did a PTEN Power Hour a couple of months ago talking about the registry. And the reason we've asked to share data with them is because if you're already taking part in that, they will already have a copy of your PTEN variant. So we don't have to ask you to find it, or we don't have to ask your doctor or the laboratory to go and find it. They already have it. So that's why we've asked to do that. And that's partly why the registry is so useful. There is also an optional part on it, and it is optional. You don't have to say yes to this bit to be able to take part. There's also an option on there to say that even if you're not part of the PTEN registry, you're happy for them to contact you, and that we can pass them your contact details so that you could take part in that too. And again, that's a separate consideration. If you tick that box, you don't have to take part, but it's just saying, yes, I'm happy to hear a bit more about that. And so it's really about us all working together and about us saving time for you and for us and for your doctors. And if you're interested in finding out more about the registry, this is their web address just here, which takes you to their website, which looks like this. And then if you have questions, we'll be in touch with Katerina. I don't know if she's got her camera on at the moment, but I don't know if she can just turn it on and give us a little wave for a moment. And that's who will be in touch with you if you do that. Okay. What about the surveys? So what are they like? So I said before, there's a baseline one, that takes a little bit longer than the others. It takes about 30 minutes to do, and that's because it asks a little bit more detail about early life and things like that. There's just a bit more that happens in that initial one. After that, the second survey that's done 1 month later takes about 20 minutes, and then the third survey, which is done 3 months after that, so 4 months after the initial one, takes about 20 minutes as well. And they ask about how the person with the PTEN gene alteration functions in important aspects of day-to-day life. So they represent different skills. They'll ask about, over the last couple of weeks, did they have symptoms of problems with attention or hyperactivity? How were they able to go about doing things and thinking about things? Did they seem particularly anxious or irritable? Did they seem rather down, or was their mood good? So there's lots of different aspects that they ask about. They also ask about sleep and communication, restrictive or repetitive behaviours, or challenging or aggressive behaviours as well. And for those, it asks about how that has been over the last month, because what they don't want to do is overemphasize something that's been transient, maybe because somebody's been unwell or because something's happened to upset someone. It's much more about how have they been over the last few weeks rather than on a particular day. And they also ask about things with daily living and motor skills and so on. And for most of them, it's a 5-point scale. So you say something like never, sometimes, often, all the time, things like that. Okay. And the study coordinator will contact you when you're due to do the next one, by email or by telephone if that's what you've asked for, or by post if that's what you've asked for. I think for most people, email's probably easier, and that contains the links. So you just click on the links from an email and it takes you to do that. If you've got any questions or it doesn't work for some reason, you just get in touch with us and we'll help you get it working or answer any questions you've got about it. Okay, there's a window of 2 weeks either side of your reminder. So you'll get your reminder for the next survey a week or 2 before you're due to do it. And then you'll get another reminder and one more reminder. And if you don't do it, we're not allowed to keep contacting you and saying, oh, come on, you know, you said you'd do it and you haven't. We're only allowed to contact you a couple of times as part of the ethics approval. And we know people have busy lives and a lot going on and so on. There might be lots of reasons why it's tricky. If you're finding it hard to do it one particular week and you think, oh no, that's opportunities gone now, please just let us know, because it is okay to do it a week later. We're just not allowed to chase you up to say, you know, are you going to do it? So just let us know, and it is okay. We'd much rather you did it than didn't, and we'll adjust the timescales for the next one accordingly after that. You know, if someone's been poorly or whatever, and we know. And when you've done this, and we know that the data has been received safely in the States, we will get back to you, and you'll get an email with your Amazon voucher, and so you'll get it then and after you've done this one, and then another one after you've done this one. Okay. The performance measures, so the webcam, this is a bit that I find quite exciting, because I see a lot of children and adults in my clinics who can use devices, but they have limited speech or other communication, and yet you can tell when they've got a phone or an iPad that they know how to work it, and they appear to even be reading words or at least recognizing symbols and finding whatever it is that they want to watch or playing a game. They clearly understand things, but we can't access what's going on inside their brain easily as people who communicate using speech or other, you know, all the other things we use to communicate. And so I hope that this could be a way to monitor and understand people better, and help us to help them better in the long run, or help us to understand people better in the long run. They've had lots of people take part where their parents or caregiver thought they might not be able to, but they've had a go and they have managed to do something that has been useful. So there's 4 videos, each one's about 3 or 4 minutes long. There's an instruction video to watch first, that if you've got someone doing it with you, you can watch that bit by yourself and then bring them in. And then you do what's called an eye calibration, and you watch a little dot move around the screen. You know, their best is fine, sometime is fine. And if you're not sure if they're going to manage it, or they have a go and you're not sure if it's been, you know, useful, just get in touch. There is a second set. So for someone who has found it a bit of a challenge, or maybe they, you know, the light was wrong in one of the videos, or someone came in and interrupted, you might get an email back saying, could you just do the second video again? So that does sometimes happen. And then again, when you've done the first one and done the second one and done the third one, those £25 vouchers drop into your email at that stage. I have got the links to watch those, so we could do that, but I'm not going to jump in to do that now because I'm just watching the time ticking by. So what are our outcomes in the end? We want it to be open source. This is something that the team in the US are really passionate about. This is not something they're developing that other people will have to pay to use. They want it to be freely available on the internet, so that researchers who were doing some research into a therapy or a treatment for people with PTEN, and that might be nothing to do with autism, it might be something to do with treating cancers, but maybe that their quality of life is changing and it's that part of the measure that's useful to use. They want it to be available, and we want to provide evidence that the survey and the set of measures that they've designed can be used effectively in another English speaking population outside of the USA. And in the development part of what I did was look at what they'd done and say, no, you can't use sidewalk and trash can, and, you know, trying to get those American terms that are different between English and US English, try and get things that we use in the same way. I'm not sure we've done it completely, but it's certainly a lot better than it was initially. So thank you so much for coming and listening. And I must also thank the research nurses in Southampton who have been brilliant at helping me get this set up and are supporting me in doing it. So it will be them you liaise with a lot of the time, and their telephone numbers are here. Again, the QR code, if you want to just scan that with your phone to take us straight to your email, or you can email us on this address. You might get contacted through your genetic centre about this. If you've already taken part, don't worry, maybe just let them know that you've already done it. And as Katerina, if you are part of the registry, Katerina is starting to contact people about taking part, so you might hear about it through there as well. Okay. And
thank you, Catherine. That was amazing and very informative. So thank you very much. So should we, there isn't actually as many people as I thought on the call now. So I was wondering, should we open up the floor for questions? Do you want to raise your hand if you put on your, if you want to put your cameras back on so we can see your lovely face if you'd like to.
We've got quite a few questions in the chat. Do you want to go through them? Do you want me to go through them?
Yeah, do you want to go through them, Priyanka?
Yeah. So I think quite a few questions about how to participate in the US study, and Kelly has kindly offered to email out that information. So watch out for that information in your email.
Yeah, you might have more information, Catherine, but because I contacted Tom Fraser originally, I think I do have his.
Yeah, and I have that too. So absolutely, if we've got people who've been listening who live in the US, not the UK, and want to take part, then yeah, we can put you in touch. And in fact, I might, if I can multitask, I'll try and put the email address in the chat down the side.
That's what I was trying to do, and I couldn't do it because I was listening to you and trying to look at my emails. But what I was thinking is I will do a group email to everyone that's joined, that's registered tonight, even the ones that aren't here. I'll just obviously blind copy everyone, and I'll just put it all in an email. So if you just want to send it to me, Catherine, even, and then, because we've only got about half the people that registered for some reason this evening, so there might be other people that have wanted to listen from the US. So thank you.
And Tara from the US says she's participated in the study with her daughter and is happy to answer any questions. So thanks very much, Tara. And if anybody has any questions, you can, message Tara and contact her. Wendy has asked that she's turned 45 in March. Would she still be eligible to take part?
Yeah, if you're still 45, you can take part. So yes, that's fine. If you're 46, currently you can't, but it's possible that it's a bit of an arbitrary upper age limit, so that may change as time goes by.
Okay.
It's not that we think it won't be useful for people who are older than 45, it's just the group that they have decided to use for the study.
Yeah. So Chloe has a question about the informant for the surveys. Does it need to be the same person for all the surveys? Because my partner who I live with will know the recent day-to-day tasks for me. But when asking about my childhood, my mum would know about that.
Okay, so it might be, I can check. I think it would be better if your partner did all of them. And I can have a check with Katie about the initial questions on that survey and how much they want to know about early stuff. So that you could get that information ahead of time. And you don't have to do it all in one go. You could start it and the partner could check anything out that they weren't sure about as well.
I actually had one question, if I may ask. So, what would your control group be for the adults? Is it still a sibling or?
We haven't got, so that is a good question. So we haven't got a control group for the adults at the moment. It was something that was raised by the ethics committee and it's not something that they have done, partly because it's quite hard to get an environmentally similar group for adults, because we tend to move on as we get older. So there isn't a clear control group for the adults.
I've actually got quite a few questions.
I won't
do them all at once, but I started kind of like, so for example, Kath, how many people do you need for the research? Do you have a limit of people you're trying to check?
We are really keen to recruit, my dog's just come in. We are really keen to recruit at least 45 people. And 60 is where we would like to aim for. So I hope that's not being optimistic.
Is that 45 people with P10 and then 45, like, so 90, or do you mean in total?
No, in total.
Right.
So we would like 15 control siblings. We would like 15 children with P10. We would like 15 adults without autism and intellectual issues with P10, and we'd like a similar number of adults or over 16-year-olds with autism and a P10 gene change. So that's our ideal split of the groups. I think we will see how it goes, but that's our ideal, is to get 15 in each of those groups.
It's good to have a name, isn't it?
Yeah, because we want to know it works for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and I feel like they're good. I think you could achieve those numbers. I think that's achievable. How long is the study running for? Is there, like, have you got a time limit where you've got to recruit people by?
Yeah, so our aim is to try and get everybody enrolled by the end of the year, but that gives us time from through the start of next year for people to be doing their 1 month and 4 month follow-up surveys. So we want to try and get to that by the end of the year.
I won't keep going with my questions. If anyone else has got questions, please do raise your hand. Anyone else? No? Okay, I'll just keep going then. Will you share the results that you get? Are you going to be publishing the results?
Yeah, so absolutely. So there are some studies, people might have taken part in them, through other genetic centres, where you do a survey and you get some answers back. This isn't like that. You won't get your survey feedback. But yes, the results will be published. And actually there was a publication that came out last week from Tom's group, talking about how it's been set up so far, how they've done that, and what the initial results are starting to show. So there's already something published out there, very, very recent. And yes, then they will publish the results, and they will put this, if we show that it works, they will put it freely available online for researchers to use. And in time, it would need some additional validation to be used in clinics and so on. But yes, the aim is to be able to use it in research as a starting point.
That's great, thank you. So in terms of the actual questionnaires, I've got a bit of a logistical one. So how long, so for example, I've already signed me and Austin up, but how long have I got I know you said you'll keep nudging us or whatever to do the questionnaires, but if I want to take part but I haven't done it yet, does the link just stay open? Because we've had a bit of illness in our house.
Stays open, yeah, so the link will be there.
Yeah,
you can go back to your email and do it.
Yeah, great.
So that's fine. It doesn't expire or anything, but we can't keep prompting sending it out again.
Is there a link? Is there a time restraint between when the parent or the adult does their questionnaire to when the child or the other person in the study does their online video? Has that got to be within a week of each other? Or
that's the ideal, absolutely, because then they're paired. What you want to be able to see is the two of them together. So that is absolutely the ideal. We all know everyday life doesn't always work like that. You know, kids don't always do things when we want them to do them, or, you know, something else happens. So as close together as you possibly can. And if it's got missed for a couple of weeks and you're not sure, just email and say, I still want to do it. And we will check with the team in the States, but from all the conversations I've had with them, they'd much rather you just did it, even if it was really late, than didn't do it at all.
Okay, great, thank you. And just one last one I've got, when the children are doing the 4 videos, I'm just trying to think about logistically when I'm sitting Austin in front of it to do it. Do you pause in between the videos? So you'd have like the 3 or 4 minutes and I can press pause, right? And then we can have a break.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have a little break and that's completely fine.
Yeah.
So it's different links that you click on. So when you get the email with that on, you click on the first one and do that. And then you click on the next one and do that. And then there's a 4th one that says if they've done all the others without any trouble, do this one.
Right, okay.
So the 4th one is, you know, just if they've had no problem at all. So
Right.
There's a question in the chat, and if I get this correct, I think it is from Jim. And Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're asking, will the results from the eye scan be less clear if you fade your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's when you do, it's a really good question, Jim. So when you set it all up, they get you to sit in the middle of the screen, and I might be able to just show you that. Hang on, I'm just trying to see if I can get it working.
Does that even apply to, for example, if you're wearing glasses?
Yeah, so it does say if you're wearing glasses, take them off if you can manage without them, but if you have to wear them, try and make sure they're not reflective. And actually Tom got me to do it when he was validating it, because I can't look at a screen without my glasses on. I can't see anything, to see if it worked, and I don't know what my feedback was, but I know when I look at the screen I can see my eyes, so hopefully it does work. Jim's waving madly at me. Jim, what is it you're trying to say?
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is people are worried about people seeing the image.
Yeah.
Now, when Katrina was waving, because she's blacked out her background.
Yeah.
The image that they'll be picking up is far worse than what we can see from when she's doing it.
Yeah. So
it was just a reassurance that you know, facial security will be okay.
Yeah, they all they really need to see is your face and your eye movements. So for a child who wiggles around and does this, which they do, 4-year-olds don't sit and do their eye movements neatly, they wiggle, then it will be better not to have the blurring on for an adult doing it.
No, I'm not talking about the blurring.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is the image that will be seen at the other end.
They won't see you at all.
The image will be far less clear than what Katrina was doing. Yeah,
they won't see that.
Like I say, it's just, or it's like you're shining a torch.
Yeah,
and they'll see the light from the torch.
That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah,
it's like they're seeing the torch shining around where your eyes are. That's a good way of explaining it. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. And
before starting the test, please make sure.
Can you tell I've just started it?
Please don't move.
Hang on, you try and share this so you can see it.
Ensure your face is well at the front. Avoid backlight and intense light from the side. To achieve a high quality of
I don't know
data,
if you
there
can
should be a
see
low
this
frame.
going on.
Yeah, yes.
Try not to get distracted. Refrain from moving or speaking. If you wear glasses, please ensure there is no noticeable glare on them. It will be better to take the glasses off. Please do not cover your face during the calibration and testing. Otherwise, the data could be inaccurate and you will have to do the test again. Please make sure the sound is turned on if you are testing a video, or use headphones for better effect. That's it. Let's go.
Okay, so that's the first bit, that's the instruction bit. Okay, and what I'm just going to stop sharing for a second, because I think what I need to do is move it across here. And sorry, I've got too many tabs open. There we go. And then move that over there and share my screen again. And hopefully, because I think if I do that, you should then be able to see this next bit. So this shows you that you confirm that you're sitting comfortably, your device is stable, your face is well lit. I won't wear glasses unless I have to, and my eyes are visible. Okay, and then I'm not sure why it's not letting me click through. Okay, let's close that. Let me do it. Okay.
I think it's because, Catherine, it says you have to turn off other devices that you
I think that's right. It's not letting me do it while I'm sharing it.
Yeah.
I had a feeling, however well I set that up, that was going to be a bit of a challenge to do online. But you get the idea of what it's like, and you know, it's quite friendly, and the instructions are certainly easy to follow, even for someone like me who struggles with IT quite a lot of the time. Thank you, Catherine. It's been really, really informative. Is there any other questions? Anyone else wants to raise their hand? We've just gone past 8 o'clock. Well, I just feel like actually, yeah, it's been really informative, so thank you. What I will do, everyone, I know some people start to drop off already, but I will put an email out to everybody that registered with details of how you can get in touch to take part if you'd like to in the UK, and I'll also put the American one on. And I will also put information about the registry, if that's okay, Katerina, just if anyone else is interested in that. Don't feel obliged from being here that you have to take part, because you don't, but I'll just put it all in an email. So if anyone's got any questions, and then you can email me back if you've got any questions and you either want to speak to Catherine or myself, then please just email and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Is that all right? Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. It was a great presentation. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.